Hey guys, Selena Walker here, naturopath and nutritionist living deep in nature on this very windy day here. And today I want to talk to you about foraging. Now you've seen I've done some foraging videos such as the wild garlic pesto, and I'll be doing some others, but I want to get really clear about foraging and when we should do it, when we shouldn't do it, and just what the ethos is behind it. Now many of you know the countryside code for foraging. It's many different things, so it's minimise damage. So you should basically leave an area where you can't even see you've been, it looks like no human has been there. So there's no bald patches, can't even see what you've taken. Another thing you might want to think about is, where are you actually picking from? Have you asked permission if it's from private land? Do you know what you're collecting? Now that's a key thing, because also you don't want to poison yourself. People always say to me, Selena, how can I learn about herbal medicine? How can I learn about foraging? And I say the best books you can buy are the books that tell you what the plants are. The first place you need to start is with plant identification. And you need to learn what plants you're picking and why you're picking them and how to pick them. Because you can pick plants in certain ways that you encourage the growth, and you can pick plants in certain ways where those plants are never going to come back away. And that is why it's illegal to dig up plants or to move plants around for that reason. And that leads us on to, only collect what you need. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. I would even add to that what would I say? Collect for your needs now. What do you need now? And that is a key thing. I'm in my garden here, but I'm blessed that I live amongst 10 acres of land. And what I used to do when I didn't have 10 acres of land, when I just had a very small allotment, some of the wild foods that I really enjoyed and wanted to pick a bit more abundantly, I actually planted there. And I think that's the key thing we need to look at here. When we're looking at wild plants, they grow in wild. And some people start to pick wild plants as if they're in the garden. And that can be detrimental on two levels. If you were picking handfuls at a time, wild plants quite often live in colonies and in guilds. And you might end up picking, if you're picking handfuls at a time, poisonous plants and not notice. Now the other thing is, if you were picking handfuls at a time, very quickly you were going to leave bare patches and someone will know that you've been there. And we just want to pick for our needs now. So we don't want to think, okay, with wild plants, they are perennial and they'll come back every year. But it's not like, say, picking salad in your garden, where you'll pick a few leaves and in a couple of weeks' time, or even quicker sometimes of the year, you'll have more. And again, because they're wild plants, they want to be consumed as soon as possible. And again, not like in the garden. In the garden, for instance, you might grow enough tomatoes and you might preserve them so you've got them all year. Now I always say the wild plants that come out at that time are what our bodies need. Quite often early in the spring, you get things like dandelions and you get nettles, which are great for cleansing and detoxing the kidneys and the liver. So you want to look at what is available at that time and not think, I need to pick enough to keep me through the year and so I can harvest it, because that's a different mindset. We want to come into nature and think, okay, I'm going to take some of this ground ivy here to make some tea or for medicinal reasons, but this ground ivy has given a lot of energy to me. What am I giving back? It maybe you give some time to that ground ivy, and maybe that you think, okay, well, could I donate some time and volunteer in that area to pick some litter that's around there? Or could I pick up my knowledge so I can understand the gills and the other plants that are living around there? How can you give something back to the plants? Because at the end of the day, these are wild plants and they're meant for wild beings. And many of us, including myself, we are domesticated animals, aren't we? And lots of us have lost the connection with the wild plants, and we all want to get that connection back. We crave the connection with nature. But foraging is all about that. It's about connecting to nature. It's not about, oh quick, let's get out there, I want to pick some wild garlic so I can make a pesto. It's about having the walk, looking with your eyes, looking with your owl eyes, looking around at everything. being really aware of what is growing together. I can see this ground ivy, but there's also some other plants, such as I've got bramble here, I've got cleavers here. You know, I'm starting to understand why things are working together. Like there's a bee here on the ground ivy, and that's the reason the ground ivy is so important, because it's early pollen and early flowers for the bees. So the last thing we'd want to do is come in and pick a load of it. So it's about understanding the plant, not just for what it can do for you, but what it does for the bigger picture. So as part of that, I would think about, okay, we've talked about not picking enough for kind of to see you through the year. You just want to pick what you need now. But also being aware if you are somewhere else and they're offering you wild food. So for instance, if you're in a big restaurant and they've got loads of wild food on the menu, it's coming away from nature. It's kind of turning wild food into a domesticated food. And when you do that, I don't know the best way of saying this, you're kind of turning it into, bringing it into the capitalist society. There's no easy way of saying that. And then it's kind of all about money then, isn't it? But I would say, you know, the wild foods, they're giving you something for free. But with that mindset, people can go a bit crazy and a bit wild and think, I'm going to pick loads because it's free and I need to do loads of things with this. And sadly, lots of people take loads home, but lots of it gets wasted. And this food is meant for the wild beings. And we are blessed to come across it. And we need to be blessed in the way we pick it. And pick only for our needs and not for our greed. So, you know, like here, I've got some willow herb and some ground ivy and some bramble, and it's really interesting because they all have very kind of astringent properties. And like for instance, you might want to have willow herb for asthma, or for some people would say coughs, but again drying the system up. For whooping cough has been used for in the past. The ground ivy here, member of the mint family, I always think of that as drying up mucus, so good for mucousy coughs. And then you've got bramble here, which I think of again drying up, but drying up more digestive issues I would tend to use that for, so diarrhea and things like that. So really useful plants I'm surrounded by here. And if I'm making herbal medicine from them, I wouldn't come and collect everything I need to make a year's worth of medicine so I can sell a year's worth of medicine in one go. Yes, I sell some medicine from products in the wild, but I would pick very small amounts and do it in small batches throughout the year. And I would just invite you to do that. I really want to encourage you to connect with nature, but connect with nature, meet her where she's at. Look at what is in the ground, check in your books what that is, what medicinal properties it has, whether it's edible, whether it's poisonous. Get to really know it, know the plant, sit with her, think, what message is she giving to me on a more spiritual, energetic level? And then think about what medicine you might want to make, and you might want to make some gifts to give to friends. But again, it's taking that attitude of, if I'm taking, what can I give back? So for instance, if I'm making herbal medicine, I always look at growing the area. So for instance, this patch here was non-existent. About 3 years ago, there was just a few sprigs of ground ivy, but through cutting this at specific times, it encourages the wild plants to grow. So I'm always working in, okay, well, you've given me that, what can I give back? And that's what I really, really want to just pass on to you all. Foraging is great, and foraging is great to get into, but we need to take from nature for our need and not for our greed. And sometimes you will go out and you will come across a patch and you get really excited, but you need to stop, take a moment and think, what am I going to be doing if I take this now? Am I going to be stopping it from growing even more? Is it a small patch? Shall I leave it and encourage it to grow for next time? And just come away from the mindset of it's free and coming into the mindset of it's a gift for nature, and what gift and blessings can I give back to nature in return. If you've enjoyed this video, I really hope you subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me get these messages out there. If you want to learn more from me, then head on over to my website, selinawalker.earth, and subscribe to my newsletter, and you can have all kinds of information on how you can create a healthy body, a healthy mind, and a healthy planet. Really enjoyed connecting with you today, and I hope to see you soon.